Hello, bonjour, Aanii, Hola, from Sault Ste. Marie to Sioux Lookout, from Manitoulin to Moose Factory. Welcome back to Connecting the North with Fringe North. My name is Garrett Ryan. I am the host to this program. Today, we are joined by the incredible creator, Zachariah Highgate. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And this is going to be a really exciting edition of the podcast because we're kind of transcending borders a little bit. So I'm excited to talk a little bit about what uh, arts creation and arts advocacy is looking like in the province as a whole. Talk a little bit about the differences between the northern and the southern approaches. But before we get into all that, I would love for you to take a moment and just tell our audience a little bit about who you are as a creator.
Okay, well, hi everyone. Again, my name is Zachariah Highgate. I am a rapper, singer, songwriter based out of Toronto, Ontario. I started making music when I was 16 years old, and since then I've been creating, writing, recording, and performing all over the city and working on really cool projects that have been really exciting, especially lately. So, if you haven't heard my music yet, you definitely need to check it out.
That's fantastic. And I know, so the way that we were originally introduced is because you had done some work with Project Nishan. Would you like to talk a little bit about that, just as that kind of connection point with Fringe North?
Yes, of course. So I knew one of the previous individuals who do Project Mission, Aria Evans, and I had met her a little bit after through a mutual friend. And she was so sweet. She's amazing. And she actually connected me with Sarah and Adam, who work on the project. And they got in touch with me. And I was super excited to learn more, to see what it was about. And after the first meeting I had with them and the other participants, I was like, oh, this is such an amazing project. I would love to be a part of this. And it just was such an amazing, amazing experience. It was so much learning for me just as an Afro Indigenous artist. I chose to do a video around the harbor front in Toronto, and kind of like the Indigenous background from about it, because I go to the harborfront all the time. I love that space. And it's a space that I find really peaceful and really welcoming. But I really wanted to take more time to kind of learn about, like, when I'm accessing this space, like, what does that mean, for like people like me who are in Toronto, for Indigenous peoples. And I just kind of allowed that to be kind of the focus of the project. And I learned so much from that. Filming it was so much fun. And I feel like I really, really grew a lot. And since then, I've actually learned more about the harborfront and facts around it. So I'm like, we might need to do a part two because
Yeah,
I learned a lot from it.
that's fantastic. Yeah, it was such a beautiful piece of work. I had the pleasure of being in the Sioux during the premiere of Project Mission Neats, so we got to watch all the amazing films on the projected screen during the Fringe North Festival, which is great. And then I watched it again recently before we did this podcast, and yeah, I was so moved by, because as someone who is from Northern Ontario and then now is living in Toronto, so I have my foot in both worlds. It was really nice to see that people like you are still exploring um, things and doing similar work that we're doing in the north. It was just great to build those bridges and to see that. So congratulations on that. First of all, it was fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I know that when we were emailing back and forth before we were actually able to do this session, you talked a little bit about how you have had some experiences pre-pandemic in Northern Ontario. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. What was your experience like coming to the region? I know it's, for me, moving from the north to Toronto, it was a huge culture shock. So I want to pick your brain a little bit about how that was the opposite way.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely say I'm a city boy. I can definitely
Hmm.
say that.
Yeah.
And, growing up in Toronto, you're so like, even though I grew up in Scarborough and I was born and raised in Scarborough, Ontario, like, there's always access to downtown. You want to go on field trips downtown, like, somebody who's downtown. So there's always that like access to those like shared spaces that are very like commercial and there's a lot of skyscrapers and there's a lot going on and the city never sleeps. And so just before the pandemic, I got the opportunity to go to Moose Cree First Nation, and I really was so excited to go, but it was definitely very different than what I'm used to in Toronto. When you
Hmm.
drive into the reserve, you're driving in on a frozen lake. That was a first.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, so we're actually on a lake. It was very, very cool. And everyone was so nice. And I went in the winter, so the lake was frozen, and also kind of just kind of walking around the First Nation community. It was just such an interesting experience, and I was so grateful to have that. And it really taught me a lot as well, just kind of about like just like a different kind of lifestyle, and just living in a different kind of place that's not just this metropolitan, very
Hmm.
glassy, shiny space. And what are some of the hurdles to come and go from different areas? You know what I mean? That's sometimes those aren't always talked about. So to get that kind of background really meant a lot for me. That really was a life-changing trip, and I would absolutely love to go back soon.
That's fantastic. As an artist, were you able to take in any of the local art that was going on in the community during that time? I don't know if there would have been anything going on in the winter because things are often pretty shut down during those months because it's very frigid up there. But I wonder if you were able to connect, even chat with any other artists that are living up there.
Unfortunately, not at that time. I did get to connect with some of the people in the band office, though, and to see the work that they were doing was
Oh, very
amazing.
nice.
Yes, very inspiring. And they were so kind. It's so interesting when I look back, because that was right before the pandemic. And I remember we went there, and, people weren't really wearing masks at that time, but we went there and everyone was like,
Hmm.
elbow, we
Yeah,
no shaking hands. So they were already, putting up preventative measures, which was amazing.
that's great.
And then I got back and then suddenly shut down. So it was really interesting to see that. But I would love to go back to, I get that, and, meet local artists, connect with local artists, maybe go to some local events and see kind of like what the art scene is like there. So absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, it's very different, I can say, like from my own experience, there's even a difference. I think in the north, there's a lot of regional connections that the south doesn't necessarily have because cities can sort of sustain themselves without having to work with other cities in the same way. But then there's a whole other level of like the reserve communities doing art and the small little rural communities. It's a totally different ecosystem up there in those little communities that I've experienced a little bit, but I need to. It's a whole other world that I've only like just kind of scratched the surface of. So I hope you get the opportunity to go back at some point and see what that world is like in comparison to Toronto, which is a whole other beast.
Yes,
Um,
especially in the summer. I would like to go back in the summer to see the lake
yeah.
unfrozen.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah. I love ice fishing, but it's oh, it's cold. It is really hard. Like I'm a big fan of the winter activities, but when you're not doing anything fun in the winter, it's pretty brutal up there. Yeah,
mm,
for sure. But yeah, I absolutely I hope you get the chance. It'll be a great opportunity for sure. Um, what is what do you find to be what is the arts ecosystem like in your worlds in Scarborough, in the GTA in general? Do you find it um very big, or are you able to kind of work within a pocket of the broader arts community? Because I experience both sometimes. Sometimes when I'm in Toronto, it feels very overwhelming because there's so much going on, but then sometimes you find your little niche and you end up working with those people over and over again, and it feels kind of like a little homey community. So I'm curious what it's been like for you here.
I absolutely agree. It's definitely both. You do have
Hmm.
like the broader kind of like bigger events, bigger situations that you can be a part of, or those bigger arenas. And then there's also, like you said, those small kind of bubbles. And I definitely think I've accessed both throughout my like music career. I would say, I remember I got to speak and do kind of like an Instagram live interview with an amazing author that I know in Scarborough named Mars the Poet. And he's doing a lot of journalism now and article writing. And I remember I talked to him about, and I was like, do you remember when we were doing the same circuits, like those UFT events and those certain Scarborough events? And we would see each other all the time because you were just there was those
Hmm.
moments in time where you were part of those different communities or those different kind of like events that were happening yearly or a couple times a year. So then once you get to know the organizers and the host, then you know when the next one comes around, they contact you and they're like, "Hey, do you want to do it again?" And so I've always been grateful for those. There's actually one in particular, actually, that I did years ago for many years, maybe 3, 4 years. I did this kind of summer festival, and they're kind of doing kind of a looking back at some of the performers and people involved, and they were asking me if I wanted to be a part of it, and I was like, absolutely. But it's so neat to see how like something that so many years ago I was part of for like a while now kind of comes back full circle in a different way. So for me, I've definitely been able to access some of those, and I really enjoyed that. I really enjoy a lot of the community experiences and the bonding, and you meet so many great artists, you meet so many people who are connected in different ways, and you get to learn from them and grow with them. And it's nice when you are able to see them a year from then or another, you know, in another time at another event, and they're like, oh, I see your growth and I see how you've grown and done
Yeah.
different things. So it's really, really nice. I would say I can totally understand where you're coming from though. And I still sometimes feel that way as a Toronto artist, just like there's some big events or there's some big things and I'm like, oh, I'm kind of nervous. Like,
Hmm.
you know, I don't know if I'm like ready to jump into those things. But I think I would say overall my experiences have been really, no matter where I've gone, no matter what event I've done, I've always met open-minded, really kind-hearted people. So I definitely say to anyone who's coming and they see that, like they see a lot going on, you know, definitely make connections, reach out to people, ask questions, and sometimes just show up. There's a lot of events I go to. Listen, I love performing, but I love going to an event where I can just sit back and relax and enjoy the show. So even just doing that, you can see people, you can meet people, you can, you know, support other artists, and that also grows the community that you're around as well. So
Hmm.
being able to, I think the good thing is we have a bit of both. You can maybe kind of silo off a little bit if you're, you know, want to take that approach, but then there's also bigger things that are available if you want to do them.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the first lessons I learned when I moved to Toronto and was in theater school is that even though Toronto has a very big um, theater community and there's a lot of very successful artists, there's a lot going on it, here in Canada in general, but like more specifically Toronto, most artists are very willing to chat with you know, new emerging artists. They're very interested in doing collaborations and just talking about the craft and things like that, which is something that seems to be more unique in Toronto than some other big metropolitan centers. This is the only big metropolitan center I've really worked in that I really know, but I can say that that's generally been true for me. Even people, there are people that are not going to have a lot of time on their hands, but people are generally really friendly, even though it might feel intimidating to first kind of um, break into a conversation with them. I've really not had any notably negative experiences that I can think of trying to chat with anyone in the industry, no matter what level of success that they're at. Do you find that with the music industry as well? I'm speaking in theater, but I'm wondering if you have a similar experience here.
I think the interesting thing is that, like, you know, it's kind of like what you said too, is like it could be a big community or industry, but it's very small. Like, once you
Yeah.
see people, you're going to start seeing certain people at certain events. You know, you can make connections that way. So I think I agree with you. I think I've never met anyone either who I feel is like so closed off that they're just like,
Hmm.
oh, you know, no time at all. And I think that's the good thing is because there are so many events happening in Toronto, yeah, maybe you saw them at this thing, but you didn't get a chance to speak to them. But maybe they're going, you know, you'll see them at the grand opening of something or, you know, another festival.
Hmm.
And then that could be an opportunity too. So, you know, I think it's just as long as you're continuing to put yourself out there
Yeah.
and you're kind of around, you know, you never know who you're going to see.
Yeah, that's it. Absolutely. It's putting yourself out there 100%. And I don't know if that's translatable in other markets, but it definitely has been the case for me here. I've made so many connections by just putting myself out there, and it's been great. Um, I I wanted to ask, it's I alluded to this earlier about cities in southern Ontario being a little bit more self-sustaining, but where is the line drawn for you in somewhere like the GTA, where we're technically one big city, but we're kind of a bunch of separate cities and areas. Do you find Scarborough has sort of its own artistic ecosystem, or is it kind of tied in with Toronto?
It absolutely does. I think that's really interesting because um, you can kind of see how there's certain events that, like, because as you know as well, like we do have the GTA, but it can be very far
Hmm.
sometimes to go from
Yeah.
one side to the other. And so I think what's nice that I've seen in Scarborough is I feel there's definitely a dedicated effort to ensure that we all have, you know, community events and festivals, and there's a lot of local, situations that you can be a part of if maybe you're not willing to maybe go downtown for an event or to North York or Etobicoke or
Hmm.
even, far to the West End. Like that just may not be feasible for everybody. So I think the good thing I would say is Scarborough is they have so many, events and things going on that, you definitely can still have a very fulfilling week. I'm
Hmm.
sure with like a lot of stuff going on or a very successful season being a part of a lot of things. Me personally, I've always loved downtown. And, even as a kid, I remember when we'd go to the ROM, or the AGO. And it's just like I vividly remember those trips because I just loved downtown. I loved the city. I loved how things were. I think one of my favorite parts about the arts with downtown, especially, is I feel like, you can walk down the street in like a big bird costume. Nobody cares. Like nobody
Hmm.
cares.
Yeah, yeah.
They're just like, you can just be
100%.
you, and people are just living their lives as well. So I always loved that. I'm not recommending anyone do that. I'm just saying as an example.
If you could,
Um,
yeah. Yeah.
so I always loved that. And I find with once you're in different places, I find like and you're kind of like alluding to it as well, like just there's different cultural situations, there's different norms,
Mhm.
there's different kind of things, and you can learn and grow in so many different places. So I've always liked being able to, like, I love doing Scarborough events, and I love doing downtown events, whenever that's a possibility as well. So I think you can do a lot in Scarborough, and thankfully we have, I would say, the infrastructure. There's a lot of great places that are doing art galleries and, open mics and showcases, and there's different programs to help a lot of artists. I'm just getting into that now. Like I'm just,
Mhm.
for so many years I'm like, what was I doing? But there was so much else going on. But now I'm like really looking around and saying, hey, like, why don't I join this program and I could learn this, or, I could connect with other artists through this. So even in that, going back to what we talked about before, just maybe I was siloed a bit in that regard. And now I'm seeing, well, there's so many resources and there's so much infrastructure that I could be a part of and that I could join in with. So now I'm seeing how I can be a part of all those things. So Scarborough, definitely, I'm grateful though to live in a
Mhm.
city and a borough where we do have so much. So if you just want to start out and you're kind of, you feel like maybe I'm not ready to go downtown, or I'm not ready to go maybe to the West End yet, there's still a lot going on that you can immerse yourself in. And I think that's a big blessing.
Yeah, 100%. For people that don't live here or have only really come here and visited downtown Toronto, or the GTA in general, is deceptively big. It I have lived here now um, for I think about 6 years, and I don't.
Mm.
I've been to Scarborough only once or twice probably. Like I think I've gone. So the zoo is in Scarborough, right?
Yes.
So that's where I've come to Scarborough. It's but like it's so big, and I was actually talking about this earlier that each neighborhood is so self-sustaining in Toronto that you can just kind of stay in your own little pocket technically, and you don't have to branch out into the city as a whole, which is so different from the north when cities are not built that way at all. And in fact, usually several of the smaller cities have to cooperate just to be self-sustaining. So it's a totally different world in that regard, that is very interesting and definitely produces a different arts ecosystem. But I think uh, this is a good segue because I want to you touched on it a little bit about opportunities for emerging artists that you're finding in the city, and I think that's actually an area of commonality. These programs that organizations are developing for emerging artists, we're seeing these pop up in the GTA, but we're also seeing these pop up in Northern Ontario as well. Fringe North is working on our emerging artist in residency program. We've been doing it to varying degrees for 2 years, I believe now, and we're really trying to invest a lot of time and effort into that. It's very important to us. And I think that all of these communities that are approaching it are doing it in different ways, but I think with the same goal, which is the idea that helping emerging artists helps the respective communities. So I'd love to hear your what has been your experience with some of this work in Scarborough, and how do you think it sort of translates into the broader community as a whole?
No, that's a great question. I would say one great example I've been a part of this year, this program called Heal in Scarborough, and it's a weekly program. They have workshops for hip hop writing and for painting as well. And I saw it. I saw it on Instagram, and I reached out, and they welcomed me on board. And it's just a weekly program that I'm a part of, and it's been so enriching and so fulfilling. And I just look forward to it every week. I just really look forward to being a part of it. And it's been going on, I think, for a few years now, but it's just so nice that we have something like that. And it makes me, that's especially what comes back to for me is like, when I was kind of earlier on in my career, I kind of would go to events, I would do things, and I would kind of be a part here, and then I'd record and release. But I wasn't always a part of programs like this where I was
Mm-hmm.
on a weekly basis or, on a bi-weekly basis, just connecting, checking in with mentors and people with experience. And having that now is so fulfilling. Same thing, I think, with mentorship, just being able to have that. I think it's so important, especially as a local artist, that you just have resources and people that kind of get it, and they come from Scarborough or they come from where you're at, so they understand kind of the culture and the things going on there. So it's so nice to have, and having it of really illustrates to me how important it is and how needed it is, because as an artist, you can feel lonely at times. You can feel like maybe people don't get it, or maybe I'm not able to connect in the way I want to, or I'm not getting the opportunities I want. And being able to just connect with people who have been there, done that, and they're able to say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, maybe try this, or let's segue here, or let's pivot here. Those things to me are so important for an artist. So now that I'm getting some of those, I'm just so grateful. And it's these kind of programs that I'm like, I'm grateful that we have. And I think we need to continue to support those, because there's artists that are going to come after me that would really benefit from this as well. So I think it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so many artists, if not all artists, can relate to the idea of working in isolation, which is why these types of things are so important. You said it very well. Um, how far down in ages to this does this type of programming, not this specific program that you're doing, but just emerging artist programming in general, like how um, is there opportunities kind of all the way growing up, or is it only what do you find sort of lacking in that infrastructure right now in your community?
I think in terms I see usually them for like kind of the 20s, early 30s. That's what I
Right.
usually see for the programs. I think what I would like to see is more promotion. And I know that's not always in
Mm,
everyone's hands, but I find, and it goes back to what you said before, there's a lot going on in Toronto, and I find it's very easy to miss things. And so
mhm,
what I had to start doing when I became an art, when I started developing myself as an artist and wanted to get myself out there, a lot of times I would look up events and look up things going on and be like, oh, I just missed that. That was last week. Or I just missed that
yeah.
and it was last month. And they're not doing it again for a year. So what I did, and which is it's advice I would give to any artist, is like, make sure you're following all those accounts that are doing these events, or organizations that you're interested in. Like, follow their social media accounts, reach out, connect, like, get your name out there, because there's so much going on that maybe by the time, you do have to apply for something, or you do have to, connect with someone to get in on something, they may have a deadline, they may have a submissions deadline, you may have missed it.
Hmm.
So I think there's just so much going on. That can be the challenge, is just making sure you're aware of everything, because it can be very easy to miss something. And then time is of the essence, and if you want to do these things, you want to develop yourself, like, you want to make sure you're aware, so that way they know who you are. Maybe they can reach out to you, or you can have it on your calendar that you need to check back in on this in a few months. That's what I find. I would like to see more of just that promotion, so that even that program that I told you about, I saw it from an Instagram ad that they did.
Hmm.
So if they hadn't done that ad, I wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah.
So more of the things like that, I think, would be of help.
Yeah. that's great that they were able to reach you in sort of a, I guess it's not that unconventional now, but it is sort of a developing form of reaching people using Instagram ads and things like that. So I'm glad to hear that some organizations are taking that approach and adapting to the times, and that it worked for you. That's great.
It did.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think a part of having hearing about these things and staying in the loop is also building that network in your community as well. Um, I'd love to talk a little bit about your journey uh, into your career as an artist. What was the point where you sort of got started in all of this? Has it been something that has followed you through your whole life, or was there sort of a genesis point that you can look to? Yeah, I'm curious.
No, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. For me, even as a kid, there's like videos of me just like wandering around the house singing. Like that was always like a thing with me. Like I'm around a lot of people who are very talented on both sides of my family. There are singers, there are musicians. So there was always that kind of like music was always in the conversation. But for me, and I grew up on R&B. Like my mom had the Waiting to Exhale CD, Mariah Carey, Toni Braxton. I had a mixtape of Janet Jackson hits that my uncle made for me, and he made my brother a Michael Jackson one. So we always had, just these incredibly talented artists just like in our ear and in our presence through their
Hmm.
music. And so when I was around 16, my brother had an iTouch. I feel like that might age me. Not everyone knows what that is, I guess, anymore. They should bring those back though. They were great.
They should,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
they were.
I
So
did. You just unlocked something in my head.
so he had one, and he got an app, and it could basically make 3 tracks. Like you could record 3 tracks. That was it. It was like a multi-track, and we were just like playing with it. And even before that, I'd written like ideas of songs here and there. Nothing like that was just for fun and just enjoying. And but with that, I really started just like playing with this idea of like recording a verse, recording a hook. And the more I did it, the more I was like, oh, wait, like I really like this. And in rap, especially at that time, there was this, they call it, Jack Yo beats and remixes. So everyone would, someone would come up with a hot song. You're like, oh, I'm going to throw some bars on that. You know what I mean? I'm going to put my
Hmm.
spin on that song. So when I started, it was kind of like, okay, I want to rap now, and I'm enjoying rapping and immersing myself in this. And now there's like all these instrumentals that I could make remixes of, and just have fun. And I just it was just like literally like that snowball effect, and I just started working on different songs and different sounds. And so in high school I was making music, but it was a little more just personal to me, and I would put things out, but I wasn't out performing, I wasn't doing things like that yet. And really when I went to university, that's when I started really making original music with original
Hmm.
instrumentals and beats. And the people I was around at university downtown were like, oh, like your music's pretty good. It sounds pretty good. And I needed that really boosted me. I
For
always
sure.
had friends who were so supportive, and my family was always so supportive, especially my mom. She bought me my first mic. And at that time I hadn't even shown her any of my music. I'm just like, I want to do music. She just trusted that it would work
Love
out.
it.
And so grateful for her, because that really again pushed me. So I always had people encouraging me. But it was really when I went to university downtown. And I think when you're in a different kind of space, and people who don't really know you like that support you, then you start thinking, okay, maybe, maybe this is like, maybe I'm on the right path, really. This was fun. Now I'm taking this more seriously. And that's when
Hmm.
I really started performing. My first performance was an open mic at Hart House at U of T, St. George campus. And
Beautiful stage. Love that venue.
beautiful stage. And it was such a nice night. The audience was amazing. And I performed there several times, but that first night, that was like, the crowd was amazing. And that again accelerated me forward and pushed me to keep going. And since then it's just been everything now. Just it started as that. It started on iTouch. But
Yep.
it's, now I'm able to perform on bigger stages and record songs that I'm so proud of, and that really are, industry standard studio quality. And I'm so grateful to be here. And it's, if you could have told the 16-year-old me this is what I would be doing now, I don't even think I'd believe you. But I'm here. We did it.
That's amazing to hear.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, Hart House is it's such a great space. I've had the opportunity to do theater on it a few times, and
Oh
it's
yes,
so nice. I love it. Yeah,
such a good
it's great.
space.
It is for sure. Yeah. What's your, just out of general curiosity, what's your favorite venue in the city to perform at?
Ooh, that's a great question. Um, okay, I'll tell you one I have and one I want. Can I say that?
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So I'd say one that I have loved is Highland Hall at the University of Scarborough campus. I performed for Frosh there
Okay.
multiple times to just these huge crowds because it's a gigantic room,
Mm-hmm.
and just the energy. And they've had like headlining performances, and I've just kind of I've been one of the up and comers, the opening acts, and just to
Mm-hmm.
be part of that was just like feeling like you're really at a concert, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you're really like, you wait backstage, you come out, you do your thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just amazing. So every time I get to perform there is like such a dream. And I would say one place that I really want to perform, and we're manifesting things, of course. So, I'm
Yep.
hoping
Of
that can
course.
come about soon is Nathan Phillips Square. I really, really want to
Wow.
perform
Yeah.
there. And so
That would
that
be
I
very
think when I
cool.
do that, I'll really feel like I put one on for my city.
Absolutely. That's like quintessential Toronto. That's absolutely, yeah, 100%. Very cool. So is that what would your dream project look like then? Would it be would it involve I guess just tell me about what your dream project would look like. That's your dream performance venue. If you could do all the money in the world, anything you can conceive, what would it be?
I think, I kind of have two answers for this. I think definitely when I'm able to do like my debut album, I definitely have a lot of projects in mind in terms of EPs. I'm working on my debut EP, which will be coming out this year, and hopefully a lot more. That's the goal. And in the past, I've done so many mixtapes and kind of compilation projects. So I've done that. Now I'm doing kind of the official original EPs. And I think my debut album, I really want to really just be able to really give people a really great understanding of me as an artist and as a person, because I think in a lot of ways I'm misunderstood, and sometimes the music really translates a lot of the things sometimes people won't always understand when they see me or when they hear me. The music say that's that next step to supplement that.
Yeah.
So I think being able to put out an album that really is like, this is Zachariah, I think that will really be just like an incredible moment for me. And I'm looking forward to doing that. It's definitely something I want to do. I just think we have other things we're going to showcase first. But when I'm
Hmm.
ready to do that, and I'm ready to kind of do all the press around it, go on tour for it, really kind of like share myself with the world in that way, I think when that time happens, I'm really, really going to be excited. And the other thing, I mean, it may seem silly to some, but it's very exciting for me, is when I can do a Christmas album. Honestly,
Very
like
nice.
that's really a big thing for me, because honestly, I grew up just loving Christmas music. I listen to Christmas music all year round. Like, I'm the person in July listening to Christmas music.
Fair
Some
enough.
people are like, yeah, they're like, if it's not November, I don't listen to it. I'm like, no, I'm always into Christmas music, classics, new songs, kind of like renditions. I just love like the emotion behind it and the festivities. So one day when I'm able to do my Christmas album too, I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's anything wrong with listening to the music year round. I feel like putting the tree too early is
Yes.
maybe that, but the music, of course, yeah, no, it's absolutely. Um, no, that's great. Very exciting
I even
stuff.
have concepts and everything for it. So when it's time, I'm ready. I'll just say that.
Very exciting. Toronto has some great Christmas markets and things like that going on. So I bet you could
Yes.
find a good place in the city to debut.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
Thank you for that.
yeah, absolutely. Um, I'm looking at the time now. I we should wrap up shortly. I want to finish off with let's say two more questions I still want to ask you because I'm loving this conversation that we're having. I wish we could keep going on for longer, but I know we have to end at some point. So the first thing I want to ask is, um, what what do you see as being the greatest influences in your work? This can take that however you will. It can be influences of people, cultural influences, geographic influences. I know you've mentioned using your work to kind of express who you are, and the things that have shaped you. So I'd love to hear you delve into that a little bit.
Sure, yeah, no, thank you. I'd say one of my biggest artistic kind of inspirations is the R&B artist K Michelle. She is someone who I started listening to really around the time I started making music as well. And I loved her voice. And a lot of her music is so raw, it's so real, and it's so deep. And especially when I started, I think that was one of the things I was going through was like, how do I really express myself and talk about the things I'm going through in real life
Mm-hmm.
in my music? And she was doing that. And she still does it to this day. She's actually working on crossing over to country music as well. And to see her do that in real time, because I was a
Interesting.
fan of hers. Yeah, I was a fan of hers from so long. From really from early on in her career, and to see her come to that point, that inspires me as an artist. Like feeling like you're not always limited by certain sounds or styles. Like being able to grow and develop, she has just continuously inspired me. I mean, every time she puts something out, it just really helps me to grow as an artist and helps me to think about how I navigate spaces as an artist and my writing as an artist. So she's definitely one of my big artistic inspirations. I'd say another one is my mom, because my mom really instilled in me really just this idea of Black excellence and perfection, and if you're going to do something, do it right. And that
Yeah.
has always really carried me as an artist. And I'm always thinking about that. I'm always making sure, like, let me put every little detail in this to make sure, it's as great as it can be. And it makes me work harder. It makes me work harder. It makes me want to evolve. It makes me want to grow. And so I'm forever grateful for those teachings. And my mom is very musically inclined as well. So just having her support and learning so much from her just throughout my life about music and art and just being yourself, it's just been so amazing. So I'm very grateful for her. And lastly, Toronto, just being a part of Toronto, I think is just it's such a special space, and there's so much happening, and there's so many amazing artists who have come out here, like Drake and The Weeknd.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see the work that they do, and you see the amazing things that they've done for the city, it inspires me all the time just to be like, I want to have my stamp, I want to put my mark on the city and in my own way, and really just, I really feel like I'm just such a product of Toronto. So I just am like, I always want to be able to rep that and show my version of that. What does Toronto look like for me? What is Toronto to me? So that's always been something really exciting to have. And even with my last single, Off Kilter, which I put out in October, the cover art actually has it's me standing there. We did a whole Sault Angelina Jolie movie theme, and so I was in a spy outfit, but I made sure we ended up taking pictures up by the Gardiner Express, and you can see the CN Tower in the back. And it was so
Mm.
important for me to have that, like, because that's really like just when you think of like quintessential Toronto, like you think of the CN Tower. And so to have that iconic imagery, it was really me saying like, I'm a Toronto artist, I'm here. So those are really my inspirations that I can.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. That's a great answer to that question.
Thank you.
It makes me very excited that you care so deeply about Toronto. I talk a lot about my love for the North in these podcasts, but I also have such a deep love for Toronto. Toronto is absolutely just as much my home as the North. So that's so great to hear your passion for the city, because it really is a special place.
It is. Thank
Um,
you.
yeah. And then the last question that I would love to ask you is, what is the most impactful moment your work in the arts? What has been the most impactful moment in your work in the arts for you?
Hmm, that's a great question. I think, it's been some of the bigger stages that I've been able to perform at, and also some of the
Mm-hmm.
music that I've made. I have this song. It was a remix to another song, but what I've done, I did this throughout my career, is I actually have done, like when I would remix songs, I would put my own spin on the sound, but then I would also write my own hook for it and do my own verses. So it would pretty much be another song on top of like an instrumental for a different song. And I wrote this song and recorded it and released it just as a remix on SoundCloud called Hey Zachariah. And that song, and I performed it so much. Like, to be fair, I performed it everywhere. But people just love that song. And I haven't performed it in years now because I put it out so long ago. But at that time, I was performing it a lot. And I was actually at an event that Adam from Project Nation did downtown at the Tarragon Theater. And I saw somebody who had hosted an event I did years ago. And he walked up to me, and the first thing he said was, "Hey, Zachariah, what you doing tonight?" And that's the hook of the song. And
Oh,
so,
wow.
yeah, and I was just like, it totally took me back. And I was just like, wow, like that was just this era of my life was this song and like everything around that. So I think having that is such a reminder of like there's so much more to come, but also to represent and appreciate what you've accomplished so far. And you never know, like even as artists, we will have plans and we'll think of doing different sounds, and we want things to impact people in a certain way, but you never know how different things are going to touch people. You don't know until
Yeah.
they tell you or you see it. So for him to bring that up just recently, it totally took me back and really reminded me, like, and my mom always tells me this too. She's like, "You've written all these amazing songs already." Whenever I'm worried or I have writer's block or whatever, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
"What do I do?" She's just like, "But look what you've already done so far." You know what I mean? So, though I'd say that is really like for me, that's really been something that's really left a mark. I think like an incredible just moment in my career that clearly continues to come back. So I actually I released something recently called a song called "Love Me Like a Song," and it was actually a re-rendition of a remix I did to Ariana Grande's 3435 song. And so that's the first time I've been able to take a remix I did, repackage it, and make it into original. And I'm just like, okay, see, now we have to do that for Hey Zacharias.
Yeah.
I got to figure it out.
That's great. I totally hear what you're saying about. I think one of the most exciting things as a writer, and I feel this as a playwright, when you put your work out there and people react to it in completely unforeseen ways. In uh, Working in theater, one of the most interesting things is when people laugh at something you intended to be sad, or uh, react in negative ways, or cry during something that you were intending to be light and funny. And it's like it's totally out of your control once it's out there. And I think that's such a beautiful thing, is to see people react to it their own ways, bringing in their own subjective experiences to your art, and just taking it in on their own terms. I think it's beautiful. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes, I think the cool thing is because we're so global now and everyone's connected in a different way
Yeah.
now. Like you're seeing how your art can connect with people who could be so far away, have a totally different life, totally different experiences, listen to totally different music or
Mm-hmm.
consume different kinds of media, but they can hear what you're doing or see what you're doing and enjoy it or take different things from it that you wouldn't think of. So I think it's really nice that we're able to connect with everyone in that way too.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Thank you so much for coming on today. This has been such a great time. I hope we can do this again at some point, because
Thank you for
I feel
having
like
me.
we've just started to get into all this. I want to keep talking.
Thank you for having me. I had such a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we wrap up, is there anything that you are, well, I know you're working on a ton right now, but is there anything specific you'd like to share that you're wanting people to check out, that's coming out soon, that you're working on?
Yeah, I would just say, if you're not following me already, please go check me out, Zachariah Highgate everywhere. I have a lot of music coming, and the goal really this year is to just the last few years I've been able to put things out here and there, but this year is go time. We are opening the vaults. We're letting it all out. So I'm saying get on board now because there is so much music coming, specifically my debut EP, but there's so much before and after that I want to do. There's so much more I want to do with visuals as well. So stay tuned. Make sure you're, subscribe to my YouTube. Make sure you're following me on Instagram. That's where I post everything first because I'm telling you, it's literally going to be like just a wave of content. And I'm so excited for people to hear it. So lots to look forward to.
So exciting. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
And if people are interested in watching or rewatching your Project Mission video, that is still available on the Fringe North YouTube. And hopefully we're gonna be doing some more collaborations in the future. We'll see what we can do. So thank you once again, and thank you so much everyone for joining us. Merci, Miguel, gracias. And stay tuned. We will be back with more stories from Northern artists and beyond the North, beyond Northern artists, to you, wherever you are joining us from. Thank you so much once again, and take care.